Today we are going to build a pyramid planter in the shop, and always in the shop you want to be safe, and one of the things that you do to be safe is you wear a dust mask. Unfortunately, when you wear a dust mask and you're trying to record something, you can't hear what people are saying. So today we won't be as safe as we'd like to be. We're not going to wear the dust mask, but we are going to make a pyramid planter out of 1/2-inch redwood bender board and a 2x4. You will need for your materials a 18-foot 4-inch wide 1/2-inch piece of bender board. Now I have a part of that here in my hand. You will also need a 2x4 that is not less than about 60 inches long. In a moment we will switch you to a still which shows you the finished product and shows you a material list and a place where you can download a link which has all of these instructions and the material list that you can then look at on your own. Alright, now I have cut the rails to length and I have ripped them down to the right width. The right width is, I believe, 2 3/8. So you now have not a 2x4 but a 2 by 2 3/8, and of course the 2 is only 1.5 inches because you can't buy a real 2x4. I've also made a slight radius in here using the bandsaw and sanded that off, and I've cut the edges, or mitered the edges to 60 degrees, and I'm now ready to cut the first dado slots. Now the important thing to know about these slots is that they are straight slots. The saw is tilted, but the miter is straight. I have marked the distance where it has to go through, and as luck would have it, that distance turns out to be such that I can put the tip, the long point of the miter cut against the far edge of my insert in my table saw. I have already set the height of this to the correct height, and so I'm now ready to make the cut. Now, it's very important that this distance be the same on not only both ends of this, but on the other rail, which I will make the same cuts on. And the reason for that will become clear in a moment. Now, to assemble the base, notice that I have put my carpenter square with the edge against my bench, and I put the one rail in the corner with the short end of the miter in the corner of the carpenter square, and I put the short end of the miter against the carpenter square down there, which is the beginning point of making the thing square. I'm then going to take one piece of bender board. Keep in mind that I have already ripped two 18-foot pieces of bender board to the correct width, which is the same width for the base and all the sides. There's, I believe it's 2 3/8. In any event, that rip has been done. Now, I'm going to lay that with just a little bit of reveal, so that a tiny bit of it's just short of the notch. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other end. So once I have that done, I have the semblance of square, but not necessarily square. And by the way, I haven't done it for this video, but I would do it. I would normally lay a bead of glue along here on both sides, and I'd set that in that wet glue, which won't set up in the time I have to deal with it. And so once I have it there, I take my nail gun, and holding it down, I put one brad in each end, and again making sure that I have the amount of reveal I want and approximately square, one brad in each end. Now, the reason I only used one brad is because I can now, because the glue hadn't set up, I can check my square and I can make sure that yes indeed the whole thing is square, and I square it on all 4 corners, and it is square. And if I find out that it's not, because that glue isn't set up and I only have one brad, I can maneuver it. So now that I know that it's square, I set the remaining 5 pieces in, which requires a little bit of deftness. Keep in mind they're also laying in that bed of glue that I laid down. This has to be done rather quickly, like all gluing jobs. I then, leaving a little space between each one because I want drainage in my planter, I lay them out equidistant from each other, which you can tell by the amount of the spaces. Take my glue gun, take my nail gun, put a brad in each one, and the same along here. And if you want to put 2 brads in at this stage, you can. I may have left out the fact that once you have this square, you want to put the extra brad in each of the corners to hold the thing square. Alright, it is very easy to cut the 18 pieces of bender board that you've already ripped into the various lengths for the sides and the ends. You'll need 18 of them, and I'm holding in my hand some that I've cut, which we'll call blanks. And they're blanks in the sense that there's no notches or dado cuts out of them. Now, the finished product, which I now have, shows the difference between the blanks and what you're trying to accomplish. Notice that there is a notch cut out of each end, which would be cut out of the long point end. That's the last step and very easy to do. The difficult thing to do, which you're going to labor over and you may have some trial and error, is to cut these compound miter dados. Remember that the dado cuts for the rails were straight cuts. These are compound miters. I'm going to show you a close-up now of how I keep this organized and keep it straight in my mind. Alright, the key to not driving yourself crazy and not going through an entire redwood tree with mistakes is to line up. First, you work always in pairs. Line the 2 pieces, the 2 blanks up, and number them. You'll notice that I have numbered them 1, 2, and down below where you perhaps can see now, I have numbered them 3 and 4. 3 and 4 are this end. Notice the direction of the arrow that the chevron shape makes. It's to the outward. That's also true down there. So I'll turn it around and you should see the chevron point going outwardly. The numbering part is important because of something I'm going to tell you in a moment. Number 1 and 2, the odd is on my left, your right. The even is on my right, your left. The same is true down below if this is kept in this alignment. Alright, in the downloadable instructions you'll find what I call my cheat sheet. And on that cheat sheet is a drawing of the chevron look that you're trying to have when you put 2 of the pairs together, or you put the pairs together. It also shows you with the direction of the saw laid, and I've laid this piece of paper here for the purpose of this demonstration. In a moment I'll put it aside, but it shows that cut numbered 1 has the miter going this way. Cut number 2 has the miter going this way, as well as cut number 3, and cut number 4 has the miter back this way. So I'm going to make those cuts in the next moment, but believe me, if you don't have those in the right order, you're going to be throwing away a lot of redwood. Now, to make this cut, I have set the miter at the right direction for cut number 1, and I find it is useful because redwood is soft material and open grain. This dado head tends to tear out the back of the cut. So I put a piece of waste, a sacrificial piece, behind it like this. Notice also I put a piece of tape at parallel with my blade, and the left edge of that tape tells me where to set the miter point. So the miter point is directly against that left edge. Now, one important thing is you will have only a single pair that have your dado cuts with the long end of your miters against the saw table. All of the rest will have the dado cuts out of the short end, which is what I'm going to cut now. So I set it up, I put my sacrificial piece behind it, I line it up, I get all my fingers out of the way, and I start the saw. Alright, I have now cut all 4 of my compound miters. And I've asked my wife to help me keep track of them, and if you have a wife who probably wanted this project done in the first place, you might ask her, because that'll save you a lot of wood thrown into the fireplace. But notice that I have the chevron look that I want. The pairs are opposite. Numbers 1 and 2 are where they ought to be. The points are lined up, and the next and last step is to cut these notches, which is what we'll do now. Okay, this is a very simple cut. You really can't do it wrong. All of them are the same distance from the long point, so at least in theory you could stack up all 18 of them and cut them at once if you wanted to. I'm just going to do 2. I've set a piece of tape to show me where to stop on my inbound cut. I've set my fence up for the amount of material I want to keep. It's the distance in here is what I'm keeping, and my waste is on the outside, which is typical. And once I'm done with that, I will just switch it and I will cut off by freehand the amount of the notch. Alright, to assemble, I have laid out the project with the base in the center, the 5 ends radiating out from the center, the 4 sides radiating out from the center in the order they're going to be. Also, and very importantly, I have placed the 2 ends that are upside down, or the 2 end pieces that are upside down on the ends. Notice that they are slightly different because all the rest of them are with the point down. This is with the point up. And I put those 2 in. However, there's one other thing that you need to do, is you need to make sure that all of the compound miter cuts have the face showing out. And what do I mean by that? I mean that this face right here, this one right here, this one right here, must point in a splayed condition. And the reason for that will become evident in a moment. And you cannot do it wrong. It will not let you put it together. This is why you had to be so careful. And then you just go around each side, alternating with each end, using your mallet as necessary. If you've made your dado cuts loose, you won't need the mallet. And you want to be very careful that you don't break off one of these points, because you can't afford to lose a point. If you lose a point, you've got to start over again with that piece of wood. They are self-tightening. You can do a little adjusting with your hands. The bender board will bend a little bit, and as you make that adjustment, you'll find that they slip right in if you've made all your measurements carefully. So the 4th one sometimes is a little bit hard, but it goes in. That, like that, working your way up. This is very strong when you're finished with it. The way these cuts are made, as I say, they are self-tightening, and the result is extremely strong. And there is your finished product.